Welcome to P Welcome to PNAA P3 Mentoring Program, Webinar 8, Pulong 8, Honing Your Public Speaking Skills. My name is Susan Repotente, a PNAA board member, a website committee chair, and P3 Mentoring Program Steering Committee member. It is my pleasure serving you as your moderator this evening. Try to imagine yourself on a podium when amid your presentation, you have a memory lapse, or due to technical difficulty, your PowerPoint ended up not being uploaded. What would you do? Tonight, we will hear from two of our invited experts and experienced PNAA colleagues in public speaking. This is to be followed by a 20-minute Q&A after the speaker's presentations. So please enter your questions on the chat box. We will also have 5 Amazon gift cards to be raffled for our webinar attendees. Before we begin, let's have our invocation prayer by Jay La Rosa. Jay is the chair of the Mental Health Advocacy Committee of PNA San Diego, and also currently a P3 mentoring program mentor. Jay?
Thank you, Sue. Everyone, let us bow our heads. Almighty God, we thank you for your love for us. Thank you that your love is poured into every intricate aspect of creation and released to live within our hearts. We come together as your children, brothers and sisters, to lift you high over our lives. Thank you that your love can bring great change and hope in life to all. May we learn and grow together as we meet tonight. We are gathered for our 8th Pulong on honing public speaking skills. Please bless our speakers, moderator, and PNAA leaders and have them be able to impart the knowledge that they would like to share. Please bless our attendees and have them be able to hear and learn the knowledge our speakers are sharing to them. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen.
Thank you, Jay, for that inspirational prayer. Let's welcome our PNAA President and P3 Mentoring Program Advisor, Dr. Gloria Beriones, for the opening remarks.
So good evening. Sue, thank you so much. My heart is full of gratitude to each and every one of the planners for this PNAA formal mentoring program, P3, Patnubay sa Pagtatagumpay. So I want to thank my fellow PNAA colleagues tonight that are here. This is a part that truly the planners felt strongly will be very beneficial to all of us, that we have two distinguished speakers that will really provide us the tools, the strategies, and their own personal ways of public speaking that I consider myself really my inspiration, like Dr. Dula Pacquaio, and she knows that. And of course, Dr. Danilo, and I call him Dan Lovinaria. To all of you, this is our opportunity to say maraming salamat for this PNAA program that will allow us to be able to learn from the experts. And tonight, we just say thank you to each and every one and to our speakers. And again, good evening, everyone. And thank you to my colleagues and to Dr. Sager, I want to acknowledge you, and to all the planners, my heartfelt gratitude. Thank you, everyone. And let's enjoy tonight learning from the experts.
Thank you, Dr. Viriones, for that very warm welcome. And now to introduce our first guest speaker is Ophelia Solam. Ophelia is an infection preventionist nurse at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. She is the current PNA New England president and also a P3 mentoring program mentee. Ophelia?
Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Dula Pacquaio, who will talk to us about improving public speaking. She is Professor Emerita at Rutgers State University of New Jersey, Executive Director of PNA New Jersey Foundation, Adjunct Lecturer at the University of Hawaii Hilo, and William Paterson University of New Jersey, and consultant in transcultural nursing. Dr. Pacquaio is recognized for her expertise in transcultural nursing, culturally competent care, ethics, and health equity. She has recently published 2 books, Social Pathways of Health Vulnerability and Global Applications of Guidelines for Culturally Competent Healthcare. She received multiple awards in research, leadership, and teaching. Let's welcome Dr. Dula Pacquaio.
Good evening, and thank you for that nice introduction. I am really honored to be invited, and I look at the audience, and I don't think you need mentoring. So hopefully this would help you sharpen your skills as mentors, but I don't think you need that much mentoring. So I will share a little bit of my experience as I go ahead. I really like this model. You know, I was teaching, I think, sometime in 1980s, and I found this model by Trenholm and Jensen. And I tried to go back and see if there's a new publication, and so far it's not there. The 4 competencies, to me, are the essentials of cross-cultural communication competencies, although they never use the word cross-cultural. But I think for our case, because we are in a diverse society and we ourselves are a diverse group within the United States, I think it behooves us to pay attention to these competencies. One, they said, is goal competence. What is the purpose of your intended message? And I'll go into that, and you stick to that goal. So even if you're angry, if you feel nasty, if you want to build relationship, you need to tone down because your purpose does not warrant your kind of reaction. The next one is interpretive competence. You must always, in a cross-cultural encounter, you must always interpret the behavior of others from their own context. Because if you use your own context, very often you don't really know them that well, and you misunderstand because you use your own background to interpret the communication. Message competence is what we may call the wording, how you say it, your pronunciation, your enunciation, your inflection. So these are some of the competencies in terms of that message. And the last one, the very huge aspect of communication, also known as meta-communication, is the way you present yourself. How do you present yourself in terms of that communication? So I'll discuss each one of them. So goal competence, always remember that it is better if you have a goal for each interaction that you don't plan, or something that maybe with people that you don't know of. Do you want to know them? Do you want to establish a relationship? Do you want to become friends, or you just want not to appear stupid? So these are some of the goals that you have to think about. So in interpretation, it is better then that you use their background. So when in doubt, you might say, I'm not sure what you're saying. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit about what you meant. So the words are very important, and that's one of the skills that we need to develop. Presentation has to do with your tone. Very important to have that tone of voice, not high-pitched and not too loud. Always remember that, especially when you are in front of a microphone. Hear your voice, because sometimes you tend to shout because it's just too loud. You maybe have to ask somebody to tone down the volume. Your pitch, your inflection, the distance. I always say match the distance. If the person in front of you is aloof, do not be intrusive. Listen carefully and observe carefully before you make any sort of advance or advances. And your facial expression, very important. So let's take it down. Studies of communication effectiveness say that meta communication, the presentation, and your relationship with the person has a lot more to do, about 97% of communication effectiveness. Your words really don't matter, because when you're angry and the person that you're angry with has a good relationship with you, you will be forgiven. But to get to that, we have to pay attention to the basics so that we don't make pitfalls. So remember, we are in the United States, and the favored communication style is assertiveness. Assertive means you mean what you say and you say what you mean. But that doesn't mean you say everything you want to say. It also means you got to be diplomatic. You need to establish that sort of respectful demeanor, especially we're professional, so that we don't threaten people and we don't put them in the defensive. So though I say mean what you say, when you're angry, try to control or tone it down. It's better to sound logical rather than be flying off the handle. So because we were trained in Asia and in the Philippines in general that we have to use face-saving communication, I find this very difficult for the brand new nurses that arrive in the US. And the reason for that is we are programmed to keep negative emotions inside us, and we explode when we have too much of it. That is what we call face-saving communication. We show a different sort of face in order not to embarrass ourselves or others. And we keep the anger or the discomfort inside us until we can no longer take it, and then we explode. That's the downside of face-saving. You get into the passive-aggressive mode. So what is assertiveness? Always write directly. Writing is a good practice for speaking. Direct means there is a subject followed by a predicate. Avoid long sentences. They are not impressive. In fact, they confuse people. So use the active voice. I don't like it. I feel sad. I like very much what you have stated. So we use I, except that APA, when you write for peer-reviewed journals, you are not supposed to use I, although in some qualitative journals, they do allow you to use I. So it's always a third person in writing, but in oral communication, by all means, use I. It would be better to say, I am angry with what you just did, or I am hurt with what you just showed me, instead of saying you hurt me. So you are actually putting your thoughts on the other without knowing really what they think of what you said or okay. So the other thing that is contra face saving is that there must be congruence between your message and your presentation. This is why I like practicing in the mirror. I have known a lot of speakers that practice in front of the mirror, and it's not a bad idea. How do you convey sympathy or empathy, even though you don't feel like it? You know, in cross-cultural communication, you have to manage the impression you make on others, because by doing so, you foster at least the beginning of a relationship or further communication. So it is important to practice. Patients usually complain that they are baffled by Filipino nurses asking them about their pain with a smile in their face. And as they listen to the patient talking about their pain in agony, and they seem to have a smile in their face. Sometimes you don't catch your unconscious behavior. Someone needs to point that to you, and sometimes you would be lucky if someone would point that to you. So I usually volunteer. I would say, you know, if there's some behaviors that I have that may make you uncomfortable, please tell me, because sometimes I don't know I'm even doing it. So make a ground rule so that people are in fact given permission to correct you. So the message, you know that we have a problem with pronouns. So when in doubt, use the name. We always have a problem with shifting to he, she, him, or her. It would be better just to say the women, Mr. So-and-so, or whatever. So when in doubt, always go to the first name or the surname of the person, because that is absent from our own language. Correct grammar. Remember, we are professionals, and especially we come in now with at least a baccalaureate in nursing. It is expected in your conversation that you know correct grammar. Pay attention to singular versus plural verb forms. These are common mistakes that I find. It is so unlike Spanish that when the subject is plural, the verb has an S. It is the reverse in English. When the subject is plural, there is no S in the verb. So the women cry, the woman or a woman cries. So it's the exact opposite. If you've been schooled in Spanish, like the old timers like me, we were schooled in that, you know, that S plural in the noun makes plural in the verb. Well, it's not really plural, but there's an S in the verb. So please remember that. The other one is the correct tense. When you shift tenses, especially during report, they are confusing to your listener. So these are the general rules that I follow. When something happened in the definite present time, use the present tense. When it happened in a definite past time, use past tense. Future, when it happens really in foreseeable future, use that. The participles, the present and the past, usually are more confusing, but they usually go on, although they could be in the past or they could be in the present. It's not definitely at a specific time so that you can use a present or a past tense. So let me give you an example here. And this is one I always see that Filipinos make a mistake. One of the women, remember, one of many. So women must be plural. One of the things. But because one is your subject, your verb must be singular. So one of the women kidnapped was an American. This was definitely in the past. But she was doing something when she was kidnapped. in some sort of a time period. So she was visiting past participle, her relatives in Israel, when she is kidnapped. So this is what I call short, direct sentences. It's easy to make sentences short. In fact, I always advise students making a paper, do not go with highfalutin words with very big introduction, and you lose the verb and the subject. It is confusing for the reader. Just go straight in terms of what you have to say, and short sentences are clearer. The pronunciation, pay attention to the accent, because sometimes you say the right words, but if the accentuation is wrong, people may be confused. The enunciation is how you inflect a word, you emphasize a word. That is more enunciation. So that when somebody say to you, can you come to my son's baptism on Sunday? And you will say something, well, my son is coming to the house early in the morning, and I don't know what will happen after, something like that. If you meant no, please say no and enunciate it so that you can be heard. I could not come on Sunday because I have my son coming to visit me. So the enunciation of the no must be with inflection so that the listener really knows exactly what you mean. In America, unless you say no, they probably think you meant yes because they never heard the direct no from you. So it is confusing. Your tone of voice, very important. We are trained in the Philippines that to be respectful, your tone of voice must be low, and also it's not hurried. When you hurry, you tend to go high-pitched and you seem to be shouting. So remember that when anxious in speaking, slow down your voice, rather your speech. I always give an example. Priscilla Sager is very good in this. Dr. Sager always speaks clearly and slowly, and you don't miss a word. And that's because she doesn't rush and she wants to make sure that her words are listened to. So remember the distance, match your audience. If they are aloof, do not intrude. Don't go touching somebody. My one student almost got fired from one of the Jewish hospitals in New Jersey because when she was talking to the Orthodox male who was present in the room with his wife, she was asking questions directed at the wife, but the husband kept answering. He answered, and yet he would look down, never looking her in the eye. And so she went over and put her hand over his shoulder and asking him, can you hear me? Well, she was reported. You know that is taboo. So do not intrude if they are aloof. It's not you. Interpret the behavior based on probably something that is unique to them. So your facial expression, avoid smiling unless you're talking about something maybe pleasant and happy. And the gestures, avoid too much gestures as much as possible. My sister Rebecca, I know I give this an example, I always correct her because when she talks, her face is like, gives all the gestures. I say, have you ever looked at your face when you speak? I said, please don't do that because I'm confused. I mean, I know you for so long, but imagine somebody who doesn't know you. I pay attention to all the facial expression and I miss the words. So tone it down and match your tone of voice and the message that you really want to convey. So enunciation, accentuation, to this day, I always Google. When in doubt, I Google how to say words and where the accent is. I used to use the dictionary, but thank God for Google, right?
Mhm.
So usually you do not shift the accentuation because there's an added syllable. So percent is percentage. It doesn't be percentage. Percent, accent on the cent, percentage. Interfere, interference. Comfort, first syllable, comforter. Interest, interesting. And when the syllable is inflected or accentuated, the rest of the syllables are garbled in. So you will not say interesting. So you say interesting, comforter. You don't say comforter, although that may be okay because they still can understand you. I always begin with my students by sounding vowels. American English, or rather English in general, is a language that is so confusing. It has so many rules, and very often it's unpredictable. So, whereas you say age, but when you say today, you don't say today, today. So, while you say 8, but when you say delicate, see, it is not sounded as 8. Delicate, articulate, chocolate. Now, I is the most common one that we have a terrible time with because in Spanish, again, I is really long E. So if we say ability, thin, but we say ability, it's almost like an eh. Ability, thin. And Wednesday. Wednesday, the two first syllables are together. Wednesday, February. And look at the difference when you tear a paper and tears from your eyes. Very differently pronounced. It's almost like you have to listen to learn how it's said. Eaten, cut, cute, cub, and cube. Cut is different from a cot, like a CO, or a CA, cat. Those are important to practice. And I like to watch the mirror, how your mouth and your tongue moves. It's got to be that your tongue you can see moves because without that, the syllables or the vowels are garbled. And then practice on combinations of consonants. Sheepskin. SH versus a skin is not skin. So sheep, skin. Stain, sheet. Salty fish, SH. Perishable, peas. Green peas, whereas you say peace as in peaceful. These are some of the things that I learned because I ask my colleagues very often to tell me. And there are some words in English that you could not just predict unless you've heard it. Like, I mean, how do you say Worcestershire? Worcestershire sauce, Leicester, and Edinburgh. I mean, unless you know these things, you probably would say Worcestershire, Leicester, and Edinburgh. But because of exposure, so that's why it's very important to listen. And when I hear something new, I always write it down and then I pronounce it. Because writing and speaking make your memory is even lasting. So practice is perfect. It's like taking a blood pressure. To me, speaking is so important a skill that it is very disappointing if nobody listens to you, right? I mean, when you speak, you want somebody to at least listen to you. Videotaping. You're fond of videotaping. Videotape yourself giving a report. I mean, not in the actual report, but practice reading a book. Audio taping. Do you know that it's only when I audio tape myself do I hear my accent? And I may never get over my accent. And so do you if you grew up in the Philippines, because by about school age or prior to school age, we establish, I think, our accentuation, our foreign accent. It's all right. We just want to be understood. We don't have to erase all Filipino accent that we have. So again, speaking in front of the mirror, scripting. When you have trouble answering somebody, especially in social situations, or when you're trying to refuse something and you don't want to say no because you have difficulty saying that to certain people, always use a script. Now, wait a minute. I mean, sometimes I will say, give me a little time. Can I have 5 minutes on this? I'll think about it. Well, maybe. Things like that. You need an intro, because if you don't have an immediate intro, then you will come up. You will have difficulty saying the next word. So always come up with a script and say it. Present it in a way that it's believable. Listening to the news. When I was first in Canada, we migrated to Canada, and I taught in Toronto, and I thought my accent was pretty good. And every evaluation, the students would say, we don't know what she's saying. I wish, or we wish we know what she's saying, or with more clarity. So you know what I did? Because I always loved teaching. I listened to the news. The anchor person I would always imitate, and I would tape myself, audio tape, play it back, and do I sound like they said? And it is practice, really. And you can't improve without doing it. Listen to interviews. Listen to tapes and records you can buy from Barnes & Noble and Amazon, records of English speaking. Examples. YouTube presentation, TED Talk I like. I learn a lot from TED Talks. Imitating enunciation and pronunciation. When in doubt, I always ask my colleague that speaks good English, how might you say this word? And develop expertise. It would be nice you would be listened to if what you say has some sort of substance. Be substantive. And being substantive, you get that from reading and writing. You know how I've improved my writing? Because of reading. You read all kinds of things, but good stuff. New York Times, I annotated everything I read when I was in doctoral dissertation. It could be a movie I saw, and I would write it in the index card, what I saw, because who knows, I can use it for my class, I could use it for my term paper. Every single one of that, it was almost a habit. I do that all the time. I don't wait for when I use it to write a term paper to take notes. I take notes as I go along, and Google is a big help. Use Google for pronunciation, checking the meanings of words and all that. So building confidence in public speaking, volunteer. I want to be a volunteer in the committee. And when you know something, by golly, speak. Because when you don't know anymore, then stop talking. So make sure your hand is up when you know something. Practice English at home. Don't wait until you're at work, because you need to think in English to make it rapid, the translation piece. I used to struggle a lot because we have to translate English to Tagalog, right? And then back again. But if you keep speaking in English, it will translate fast in your head. Seek feedback. Do not be afraid, but seek feedback from people that you admire or people who are really well at what they do, and develop expertise. Do not waste people's time. When I speak, I do spend a lot of time thinking about what is the main message that I want to get at, and I do a lot of research. you can't just spout whatever you want to say just because you are invited to speak. Make it worth their while. So develop expertise and you volunteer. And once they know you have that expertise, they will probably invite you again and again. And you seek mentors. It's better to have a mentor who is American and a mentor who is Filipino. I have 4 close friends. One who is my fellow Filipino that I talk to whenever I have my own Filipino type problems. When I have problems at work, I consult my American colleague. And together, you see, all these kinds of people will give you a balanced perception of what the real issue is. Listening to how people speak, practice, enunciate the words when you go home. All right, so I think that should be, I hope I did not go over. Thank you, but we will have a panel discussion later, right? So let
Yes,
me
Dr.
stop
Pacquiao.
share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pacquiao. You truly embody the public speaking spirit, your knowledge, and your skill. We appreciate you on sharing your expertise with us. To continue and introduce our second guest speaker is Dr. Miriam Cabral Stevens, Associate Professor, School of Nursing, Center for Health Disparities, Innovations and Studies at Eastern Michigan University, a PNA Michigan member, and currently also a P3 Mentoring Program mentor. Dr. Cabral Stevens.
Thank you, Sue. I'm actually now scared to speak after Dr. Pacquiao's presentation. Our next guest is Dr. Dan Lovinaria, and he has been a practicing CRNA for over 23 years and are proud to be the first Filipino CRNA that was recently inducted as a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing in early October 2023. Dr. Lovinaria is a senior CRNA at the Minneapolis Veterans Admin Affairs and a faculty at Johns Hopkins Nurse Anesthesia Program. He was the former program director of the first DNP Nurse Anesthesia Program in the U.S., the University of Minnesota, and a former president of the Minnesota Association of Nurse Anesthetists. He serves as the chairperson for the National Board of Certification and Recertification of Nurse Anesthetists National Certification Examination, reviewer of the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology Journal, and the Minneapolis VA co-chairperson of the Professional Governance Coordinating Council. Dr. Lovinaria is the inaugural PNA Central Minnesota president that will be inducted in December 2023. His contributions to nursing has been disseminated in local, national, and international presentations. His DEI advocacy in nurse anesthesia was recognized in June 2022 as one of the 25 Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal's Healthcare Heroes recipients, 2021 inaugural fellow of the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology, and 2022 Distinguished Practitioner Fellow of the National Academies of Practice in Nursing. During his spare time, I'm glad you have spare time, Dr. Lovinaria. Dr. Lovinaria is engaged in modeling with clients, including Best Buy, Target, 3M, Medtronic, and Purina, just to name a few. He is also a member of the Screen Actors Guild and was part of an independent film movie with speaking role Go Polly, released in 2022. I present to you our next speaker, Dr. Dan Lovinaria.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Give me a thumbs up, everyone. Yep. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Naimbag nga rabi iyo gagayang ken kakabsat. Wow, my Ilocano, my mom would not be so proud of me tonight. But I want to thank the P3 Steering Committee this evening for this amazing program you guys are monthly putting up. And I also want to thank all the I see over 100 attendees this evening. What a great turnout. So I'm very impressed, actually. And also I'm very grateful for the invitation to also follow Dr. Pacquiao. What a great presentation. A lot of my strategies, it actually support her concept. So it's kind of a win-win for us this evening. I want to share a little bit of my background. I was an immigrant in 1979. I was a teenager, moved to Hawaii. I spoke English, but I had a lot of accent, Filipino accent. My classmates, friends made fun of me because of my Filipino accent. I was very shy, so I was very determined to learn the American way of speaking. English is still my second language, but I try very hard because as we Filipinos, we think, when I read books, sometimes I think of the Tagalog first, and then I start reading it in English. So it's a process, and being in anesthesia school where you're reading so many books and books, where I'm a slow reader, but I'm a diligent student. So it was a challenge, but I took a lot of voice lessons, singing voice lessons. I've taken drama classes in college. So that kind of shaped me to what I am today. So I'm very honored and to be with you folks this evening. I'm going to share my screen now, and let me know if it's not showing, because we practiced it earlier. So this many of us are scared of speaking on the podium, right? It's just it's one of many people's fears. So tonight, along with Dr. Pacquiao's presentation and my presentation, combining them, at the end of this presentation, you'll be able to speak with passion, ignite the crowd, and unleash your power. That's the message this evening. So with all this concepts that are presented to you this evening, you should go home with some strategies and principles that may help you in your future speaking engagements. This photo in front of you is actually me in front of two teleprompters at our annual American Association of Nurse Anesthetists. There are 5,000 attendees, and I was the chair of public relations, communications, and marketing for the 4th year. And I was presenting all the award winners in front of during opening ceremonies at the Congress in I believe this was in Seattle, Washington. So it was an honor to be a chairperson, but it's also a great validation that Filipinos can be up there on the podium as well. So I'm very grateful for that experience. The next video that you'll be seeing is a short glimpse of what I want you to take home. Pay close attention to the tone, body language, facial expressions, and like what Dr. Pacquiao said, the accentuation and enunciation. Let's take a look.
Mentorship and development of innovative nurse anesthesia programming are effective strategies to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. My impact in mentorship advocacy and program globally increase diversity in the nurse anesthesia workforce. It drives a more balanced profession, facilitates inclusion, and reduces bias.
So this evening, then, at the end of this webinar presentation, our objective is really to apply public speaking strategies that will engage the audience, overcome fear, and nail your next speech or presentation. And maybe the millennials will say, slay your next speech or presentation. Our first strategy this evening, I'll be presenting 8 strategies, perhaps, that you could utilize for your future speaking or public speaking engagements. First things first, know your audience. You need to tailor your presentation based on your audience. What kind of audience are you presenting? Is it a high school class, or are you presenting to a church? And also, it's also good to know to appreciate who the host is, perhaps interview that host on what exactly this presentation is all about, what is important to them, and what will they find useful for when you present your speech or your. So first thing is know your audience. The second strategy is preparing your talking points. Many speakers that I've seen in the past, they typically write their speeches almost verbatim, and that's not a good idea because you tend to look on your papers or your notes the whole time you're presenting. So it's very important to write key messages that you want your audience to know. Perhaps start with 3 to 5 broad messages, and then work your outline where your talking points that support your broad messages. And make sure that you organize these points in chronological order. You don't want it to be very, I call it the potpourri or a basket of ideas where they don't jive. It's not very cohesive. So therefore, try to start from a big broad of topic or a message, then work your way down, writing just like writing a paper or writing an outline. You want to start with a major heading and then work your way down with the details of your presentation. Prepare your talking points. And the next, let me just move this here. The next strategy is study great public speakers. There are so many speakers nationally, internationally, and just using the YouTube. It's my best friend, actually. When in doubt, I'm always using the YouTube, or like Dr. Pacquaio mentioned, it's the TED Talks. They are short, but you learn a lot. You learn. I enjoy many of these individuals here written to your right: Ronald Reagan, Oprah Winfrey, Martin Luther King Jr., Barack Obama, and Tony Robbins. Those are just a few examples. I'm sure you guys have your own speakers, favorite speakers in that you appreciate. Make sure that you take note of their body language, use of hands. Never present where everything is closed, or when you're closing your arms where you want to be open. Your arms need to communicate at the same time, along with your facial expressions. Pay attention to the delivery, intentional words, pause. Because pause makes a lot of difference, because it sends a message that the next, that's very important. So, and also the tone. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The tone of your voice is very, very important when presenting, because your attendees or the audience will appreciate great speakers and also the content. Slow down. Very keyword there is slow down. When you're practicing your voice and breath control, when you're doing your presentation, you try to talk so fast because you're so nervous and you're tachycardic, your heart rate is so fast, but you need to slow down. Take your time. Look at your audience. Look at how they're responding to your presentation, because the tendency in the beginning of your presentation, your heart rate is so high because of the adrenaline rush. You're breathing so fast that you need oxygen. So you need to, again, slow down. Keep a steady pace. And when you're practicing, like what Dr. Pacquaio mentioned earlier, when you're practicing, when you think you feel like you're speaking too slow, that's actually the perfect pace. So because the tendency, like I said, you're tachycardic, your heart rate is fast, you're breathing fast, you need oxygen. So you need to keep a steady pace, but slow. And perhaps consider this: before getting on the stage, on that podium, close your eyes, take 10 slow, deep breaths, and in and out, and exhale. And then after 10 breaths, right during your introduction, proceed, and you'll have all this extra oxygen because you're breathing slow and taking it in. Rehearse, practice. Did I say practice? More practice. Iron out your messages during your presentation. As you practice more and more, you tend to realize that, oh, maybe I don't need that extra sentence. That word is hard for me to say or enunciate. I might find another word to change that. You'll find better ways to present your parts of your presentation if you practice, practice, and practice. Then you will look very natural on stage. You look more comfortable. You look confident. So therefore, practice makes perfect. The next strategy is record your speeches. Dr. Pacquaio also mentioned record your speeches, because when you record when you're speaking, you can't really tell because you're so focused on your presentation. Therefore, you need to record it and take a listen of what you're saying. We talked about grammar. It's also very important not to say too many words, but send the right message. Enough, less is more. Delivery is important. You don't need extra words, extra fluff for your presentation, but key into your take-home messages for your audience or your attendees. Record so you can really watch yourself how you're. And I've watched a speech. I was just in Washington D.C. last weekend and at a difficult airway workshop, and one of the speakers was saying like every other sentence, and it was very, very distracting. So I'd suggest watch yourself and key into bad habits that you're creating. A lot of speakers also, especially the beginner speakers, tend to say those are fillers. You don't need the extra every other words or every other sentence. The audience will catch that if you're saying and because they're aware that you're nervous. So less is more. You don't need to put an extra on every sentences or every sentence that you say. Find ways to improve your speech, because once you watch yourself, you tend to why do I always do that? And then record it again to make sure, take notes of what bad habits you don't want to continue. So it's very important to record and reset and redo it again. Practice makes perfect. This should be number 7. Typo error there. Add a visual aid. It's very important to. I'm a very visual person. I'm an avid photographer, and maybe the next attendee next to me watching a speech is more a word kind of person. So during your presentation, it's very important to key in or engage your audience with some of your visual effects. Could be a video presentation, could be graphs like that picture in front of you. It could be infographics that might communicate, but make sure what you're using as a photo or a graph you have to make sure that these images relate to your presentation, because if you're just putting a picture over there just to put a picture, it doesn't make sense. There's no cohesiveness of your presentation. There's no relationship between the photo image that it's embedded in your presentation and your message. So make sure that there's connection with your relationship between your images and also your notes on your presentation if you're using PowerPoint or projection screen. Create slides with images that really hit the points, your key points, your take-home messages, what you want your audience to go home with. You want them to go home with aha moments, like, what did I learn today? I always ask my students when I'm working with them in the operating room, once we're done in the recovery room, I always say, what are the 3 things that you've learned from that last surgery we did? Tell me 3 things. And then those are same thing. What are your key points that you're trying to present during your speech or public speech? Why is it number 6 again? I thought it's also important to phone a friend or relative, significant other to watch you and ask them to watch you carefully and give them notes. I tend to say, I tend to look down. I tend to give them notes so that when you present to them, they have a homework for them to take notes on. Oh, you said 45 times, and you look down most of the time, and your accent, you keep saying advocacy, advocacy. So keep those pointers, because if you don't give your friend or your relative, your significant other homework, they don't know what they're looking for. They might say, I like your content of your speech, but that's not really the point why you're asking them to watch your presentation. So you'll ask for a constructive feedback, because that's what you want. You want them to be really transparent and brutally honest with their feedback. And the pointers that you give them will really translate to more productive you, the more confident you, the more skilled speaker you will be after all that feedback that you'll receive from them. Take a public speaking class. There are so many courses out there, online or in person. What I can suggest to you is attend these courses, because you gain a lot of skills along with all these people taking the same courses, because you can learn just sitting next to these classmates for the same reason they're there. They will improve your speech or your skills rapidly as you present and speak. Learn from the expert. When the instructor or the professor or the speaker is there, or you're taking a course, watch their movements, facial expression, enunciation, their key messages, and they'll tell you the KISS principle. Keep it simple. Sunshine, KISS, right? Keep it simple, sunshine. There's another word to replace that S, but it's a PG presentation this evening. And network with these students. What do you do for work? What are you taking this class for? Well, I have a oral presentation. I have to present my PhD dissertation or my research. So, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm actually speaking at a conference. So network with them. What do you do for presentation? Do you use a lot of technology? And network with these people. What I suggest is that if you're doing a virtual presentation, try to take courses online where you can appreciate the virtual aspects of it. But if you're doing an in-person presentation, I also suggest maybe going in person, so then you physically see the speaker that's working with you or that's teaching the course. So that's kind of nice. I'm always looking for opportunities to take classes. And back in the day, I used to think when I was going to University of Hawaii, there's always one extra credit that I take, because either voice lesson or drama class, because those kind of help my speaking abilities, my Filipino accent. I'm still my first dialect is still Tagalog, so I'm very, very proud of that. But also I need to adjust when I'm speaking to my colleagues at work where they're all Americans. So I want to make sure that I'm adjusting and adapting to the situation. It's always nice to know situational awareness when you're conversing with others, or when you're speaking to a group of audience that's non-Filipinos. Relax your body language. I talked about earlier that a closed arm when presenting this, your audience will not be very impressed with that, because you want to be open. And even when you're like using your hand movement, keep your hands open. And when you're pointing, make sure that you point this way, not this way, because again, your hand is closed fist. An open presentation is always nice, because you're being open to your audience. You're not closed in. You're not, because you look upset when your arms are closed that way. Maintain your proper posture and make an eye contact. Like Dr. Pacquaio mentioned, our culture, you know, in the hospital, nurses, we tend to look down, because when you're next to a physician or a doctor, because, you know, the hierarchy. But no, we're in America. Direct communication, eye contact is very, very important in today's society, because that shows you're confident, assertive, and also clear messaging. It's very important to pay attention to your body language. Move around when you're on stage. Be natural, and avoid hands in your pockets when you're presenting, unless you're grabbing a piece of gum for later. Just kidding. So not to cross the arms and use purposeful gestures, intentional. So when there's an image that you're trying to point at, look, be intentional with your hand movements, and you're not just moving your hands because you feel the need to move something. Be intentional, be with your words, and also with to match with your body language. I want to thank you for the opportunity this evening. So those are really not 8, but 9 strategies this evening to hone in on your skills. And I want to thank if you've ever in the 90s, if you've ever been to Hawaii and flying Philippine Airlines, you might have heard this voice overhead, because I worked for the Philippine Airlines at the gate. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Honolulu International Airport. For those passengers disembarking here in Honolulu, please check with the agent at the base of the escalator for transportation to Immigration and Customs. All other passengers continuing to Los Angeles and San Francisco, this is your holding area. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Maligayang pagdating dito sa Honolulu. Para sa mga pasaheros na dadating dito sa Honolulu, puntahan lang ang ahente sa ibaba ng escalator para kayo makapunta sa inyong Immigration at Customs. Sa mga pasaheros na patungong San Francisco at Los Angeles, dito lang ho kayo sa holding area. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this evening. I appreciate the invite, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Great presentation, Dr. Lovinaria. Thank you, because you exemplified all the strategies and the qualities that you talked about in your own presentation. So we are going to be having our question and answer. And I'd like to ask Bob Cahall, Colonel Bob Cahall, who is monitoring the questions for us. Bob?
Yes, good. Yes, thank you, Sue. Good evening, everyone. We have a question here from Gigi Narisma Estabilo, addressed to Dr. Pacquaio. She's asking about what to do when there are the speakers using filler words such as ooh, ah. So what can you advise?
You're muted, Dr. Pacquaio.
Bob, can you repeat the question?
Yes, Dr. Pacquaio. The question is how to address those filler words such as ooh, when the speaker is thinking about what to say next.
Okay, this is why you need scripting. I always, when we do a acculturation program for nurses, I always say, make a script. What do you say when you are not ready to say no, but you meant no? How do you introduce it? What do you say when you're asking a favor? And what do you say if you want to correct somebody? The most difficult ones are the ones that you foresee would be conflicted. So create some sort of a paragraph or 2 sentences so that you have a full sentence to say. How do you ask for vacation when you know everyone else is going home to the Philippines certain time of the year? So that I would really ask for a script, memorize it, practice in front of the mirror, and you will have a retort. If she says no to you, then you have to come up with another, because you cannot repeat the same sort of argument. So always be prepared when you're asking somebody to do something for you and the answer is no. You have to come up with another retort. If again there is a no, you have to come up with another innovative retort. And then maybe if still a no, come up with a compromise. So where do you see we can work together?
Thank you, Dr. Pacquiao. How about you, Dr. Dan? Do you have any advice? You briefly mentioned it earlier. but if you could elaborate on that.
I'm a huge supporter of having note cards, because
Yeah.
note cards can save you if in case you have you lose your track. You have an outline there. What I recommend also when you're presenting is don't when you're stuck. It's okay to pause a little bit,
Mhm.
because if you're filling it, we call it the filler, the filler. Is very, very distracting for the audience, because I used to, one of my bad habits when I'm at a presentation and a presenter is saying the same words 10 times or doing I used to make a stick note, and then at the end I'm like, I can't believe he or she said 45 times. So it's okay to pause a little bit, collect your thoughts, look at your cue cards. Oh, my next topic, or segue into your notes by closely looking at your outline. So keep that in mind when studying your it's okay to pause and give yourself time to reorganize your thoughts and then continue with your speech or your delivery.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, Gigi Narisma is also thanking you both, because she said she sometimes lose focus. Do we have any more questions from the audience? I don't.
I have
Yes.
a hand raised
Yeah.
here from Bong
From Bong
Dayan.
Dayan. Okay.
Oh, my
Go
vice
ahead,
president.
Bong.
Good evening, everyone. With your permission, I would like to practice my public speaking by asking my question. I noticed that almost all of the comedians, they can capture their audiences. Would you advise some comedy to a formal presentation to capture the audience? Any Dr. Pacquiao or Dr. Dan Lovinaria can answer. Thank you very much. How did I do?
Very good question. Go ahead,
Yes.
Dr. Pacquiao.
My audience usually is professional. So I usually do not go into other things that are not related to just to capture the audience. I think the best idea that I could advise you is put something with substance. Otherwise, it's a waste of my time. I might as well see a movie. Be careful about, I know that Dr. Lovinaria gave you some general principles, but for example, when I speak, I like to talk about my slides. So I may use very minimal words, but if my student has a heavy accent and has difficulty speaking English, I would say put everything on the slide, because the audience will struggle in understanding you, but at least if it's there, they can read it. So match your audience, as what Dr. Lovinaria says, and always stick to what you think you know best. Don't get deterred by other kinds of examples that you saw that you have to imitate. I think as you develop your public speaking ability or your ability to interrelate with people, you develop your own style. And you need to be authentic. That's very important when you speak, so that you believe in what you say and you have something to support what you say.
Thank you, Dr. Pacquiao.
Dr.
Dr.
Lovinaria.
Segar has her hands raised.
Oh, hi. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of B3, I wanted to commend both speakers for this very complimentary talks that you just gave us. In terms of a formal course in public speaking, in my long years in academia, when students were selecting an elective, they say, oh no, I don't need public speaking. But later they would thank me because it really opened a lot of doors for them. So I want to reinforce that. Thank you.
I have a question for either one of you, Dr. Lovinaria or Dr. Pacquiao. How would you handle difficult questions or audience members during a presentation, especially if they're challenging your presentation, the content of your presentation?
Well, for me, when I mean, nobody's perfect, first of all. So if they're challenging your presentation, perhaps I try to defer them because you don't want distraction in your presentation. You could say, that's a great question, good point. I'd love to meet with you after my presentation and we can have a dialogue. So you kind of don't want it's not a battle. You don't want it to be a battle between you could ask for clarity afterwards, because you're there to present and if they're trying to challenge you specific items, like I would love to have a discussion with you and help me understand what your perspective. I try to deflect them because if there's 5,000 people in the audience and they're just there to ridicule your presentation or challenge you, then have a discussion perhaps afterwards, because that's how I would handle that. Dr. Pacquiao?
Thank you.
One thing is you need to be prepared. This morning, I was the keynote for a bioethics conference, and we have multidisciplinary folks. And I know I was speaking to ethicists, physicians, nurses, social workers, public health people, and the clergy. So I need to get sometimes it takes me a good 3 months to prepare for my talk, though I write about ethics quite a bit. It's nice if you have facts to back up, if you have studies to back up your statement. And if I'm being challenged, I will probably put that question to the person, do you have studies to back up your contention? And let's see what the person says. Even with students, always confront students with facts, with data. That's the way to confront. Don't feel emotional. Focus on the issue. I really would like to know where this is coming from, and maybe if you could share with us.
Excellent advice, Dr. Pacquiao.
Issue, whatever.
We have another hand raised, Dr. Gloria Beriones, and another one.
Yes, so this conversation is really very important to all of us. As I traveled across the country, this is the topic that I hear so much, not just from my fellow friends, rather from those that have taught schools, have been a dean, and I took it by heart and said to myself, truly, this is an area that we always, English is our second language, we have to be aware. And there's nothing wrong to have our accent because we're Filipinos. My son, when I was practicing my presentations all the time when I was in school and through the years with PNAA, he would say to me, Mommy, you're fine, you're okay. Because he realized that that's my accent. However, I wanted to do more. So this kind of conversations with experts like Dr. Pacquiao and you are my aha moment, Don, honestly. You are. I admire you. You took drama. That is key because you present that body image right on stage. And the way you angle yourself, I can tell you really have a professional. Yeah. yeah, you
Yes, I agree.
so that's
Thank you.
truly a person who have taken classes, professional classes. So this conversation, my hope that PNAA have continuously brought to light the importance of public speaking so that we will continue to improve ourselves, not to be perfect, but to be understood and to have the confidence when we are up on stage or talking to a colleague who is not Filipino, and so that we can express ourselves in a way that they will say, aha, look, this is a person that I can respect because, look, very confident the way they speak. And that's exactly my hope tonight, that we can take away from here, Dr. Pacquiao and Don, and Sue and many like Bob and my colleagues out here. This program, the mentoring program, the Camp Aruga, is really for us Filipino nurses to build our confidence out there as leaders, to speak for eloquently, if we could say that, eloquently, because we got the tools, the strategies that we learned tonight, and apply it. So great conversation, Dr. Pacquiao. Thank you so much. And Don, thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beriones. I will take the last question. We are almost running out of time. So, Arlita Pang.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Dr. Pacquiao and Dan. It's really, really very helpful. It's a great presentation. But my question really is that if you're doing presentation and nobody is really listening much and the audience are very noisy, I just experienced that when I was giving my outgoing speech as president of FNYAM in Houston. And I felt like everybody was so loud, and not even the moderator or whoever that was in charge of that event that night was very helpful. So what do you do in that case? Thank you.
Okay.
I personally,
Dan, you
if
want to
I'm,
go ahead?
yeah, sure. If I'm presenting, and that's why I like to move around when I'm presenting, and to a point, if no one's listening, I sometimes walk around in the audience. So if that person that's talking I would stand there and present, and they're almost forced to like look at you or listen to you, or they can't really talk anymore. So I tend to walk around when I'm presenting. Therefore, that gives them a subtle cue that I'm speaking, I'm sending my message. So either I walk around the stage or I walk around in the audience. Sometimes I've presented it in the past where I actually start from the backstage. They introduced me, Dan Lovinaria, ladies and gentlemen. I would start from the back and start presenting, and then clicking my slides, and then within 30 seconds, I've graced the audience and kind of scope the landscape. That's what I sometimes do.
Thank you, Dr. Pacquiao. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Do you want me
yes,
to speak,
please.
or we have to end? Speaking in a commanding voice is very important, and timing. Sometimes it's not really your fault. Maybe the program has been too long, and everybody is just, they have had it. So many people got awards. I mean, it's no wonder nobody's listening at the end. So in planning the program, you have to really realize which are the most important portions of the program. But I think when you speak in a commanding voice, project your voice well, but I would adjust my talk. You know that when they're not listening, you are not giving your 20 minutes prepared speech. you may have to alter your approach and do something pleasant, thankful, and making people more happy about who they are and the night of the occasion, whatever. But it's true. I've seen that many times. I don't want you to shout either, but it behooves the program planners to make sure to put time limitations to certain things, especially the length of the program.
Thank you.
yeah, I just want to add to, I'm sorry, I know we're, but the same thing with if your speech, you're only halfway to your speech, and like depending on the program where you're following the program, if you're the last person and everyone's dying to dance, right? A lot of Filipino events, they just want to dance. Is like she said, alter your speech. And sometimes I scratch my presentation and I say to a member, I ask, like, can you name me two major successes we had this year, and then engage them. So that way, then it's a two-way street, and say what if your presentation on all the successes you've had during your term, you can spin it and say, hey, what do you think of can you name me one major events that we did, or goals that we achieved this year, and then move around the audience again and say, how about you? What do you think? And that way you're engaging the audience, and you kind of altered your presentation, but spin it with the same concept on your actual presentation.
Thank you.
Great advice.
I think
for
it
both of you.
also happened during dinner time.
Oh my gosh, that's really hard.
So it was hard. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Dr. Lovinaria and Dr. Pacquiao, for this great night that you have shared with us, your expertise, your knowledge, your skills. We know that even if we are surrounded by many of those that are already doesn't need to be mentored, we still need to hear this message from both of you. So before we move on to our Q&A,
So can I have a request to recognize Dr. Yago, please? Give her.
Oh, Dr. Yago, okay.
Thank you, Sue.
Dr. Yago?
Yeah, I'm sorry for being a little late because, we have so many of these webinars and meetings. But one of the things that I've seen, and I wish no one would say this, if someone said this already, when sometimes people begin their speech is, please excuse my accent. No, do not begin with that. Be confident in what you know. And as Dan said, if people are talking, just kind of cut it, know where you have to cut it. Record yourself, practice. As Dr. Barona said that, yes, you always have someone to kind of give you cut that word a little bit, always have someone to check how that is. I know that with my graduate students, and they're going to be teaching new nursing students, I would say, listen to what is being said, then how it's being said. And that there are resources at the university, and some of you too, you can check it out there, Open University, and it's through what we call communication studies. And actually we developed a class for folks to be able to do that. And even in some places, even our teachers at the university would be able to register for the special communication where they learn articulation, because it takes time. And that just want to let you know it's practice and practice. And just be ready, again, with the speech or the elevator speech I had a couple of weeks ago or months ago. And just be ready when people, that people are going to ask you things, or just be ready, and it takes practice. And that I know when people talk about these things, yes, you get a little nervous, but after a while, it's like, okay, well, I can do this. So believe in yourself, believe from your heart, and believe your truth and your value. That's going to make it more emotional and committed, and you're going to be stars.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yago, for your insight. And now let's continue with Carol Robles, who's going to give us the contact hours information.
Well, hi. If we can take time to do the short course evaluation, this will give you 1 contact hour. And if you are unable to do it tonight, I could still send it in your email. But if you can, please go ahead and do so. We'll give you at least maybe 2 minutes. And then we're going to the raffle drawing of the Amazon gift cards.
Yes.
Or maybe 2 minutes is too long. Maybe a minute is enough. Okay. And we'll also send the link on the chat.
I think we're good.
We're good? Okay. So we'll go ahead and do our raffle drawings. So we put everyone's name in here, not in alphabetical order. Try to scramble them. So we'll do the first raffle. Wow, Susan Castor. Congratulations, Susan. You have to be present to win. Susan, can you say something?
Sue, I thought it was
I am
me.
here. I am here, Carol. My best friend, I am here.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Congratulations.
Okay.
Next.
You made me nervous. I thought it was me.
No way, Sue. You're exempted.
Yes, correct.
I know. Okay.
Second one is Myrna Gakusan from PNA, Georgia. Congratulations.
Wow.
All right.
I am here.
You're here.
Please
Great.
enter your emails on the chat box. The winners should enter their emails, please.
Thank you. We both know them so far. So let's see. Third one, Maria Montero. Maria, are you around? Maria.
No response.
No response. Going once. Twice. Okay, we will remove Maria. Next. Wow, Jet. Congratulations, Jet.
Wow, Jet.
Third winner of the Amazon gift card. Is it $20 or $25, Dr. Sagar?
I believe it's 25.
25.
$25.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm in the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
I will email it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Congrats, Jet.
Thank
Fourth
you.
one.
Congratulations.
Wow, Mona
Oh,
Lisa
Mona.
Gao. Dr. Gao, congratulations. Can we hear your voice?
Hello, good evening from Austin. Thank you.
There you go.
Hi,
She's here.
Sue and Carol. Maria Montero just posted something on the chat. She said she's here, but her speaker did not work.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so then that's
That's it. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we're
Thank you, Bobia.
yes. Congratulations to our 5 winners of the Amazon gift cards. And before we close, I'd like to thank my colleagues, the steering committee members who helped tonight for this presentation. For Colonel Bob Gahol, for managing the chat box, for Carol, who did this, being the Zoom master, the contact education hours, and the raffle draw, and all our invited speakers, and also our the colleagues who presented our speakers. May I call on Dr. Marlon Garzasaria, our PNAA President-elect, also a P3 mentoring program advisor, to give us his closing remarks.
Before you do that, Marlon, you may just have a correction. It's actually Dr. Mary Joyce Ramos who did the contact hours.
Oh, did.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary Joyce.
No worries, but just to thank Mr. Pete Calixto from PNAF who approved the contact hours.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Great. Thanks, Sue. It takes a village. We all saw that at the end of the presentation, just with our contact hours and a few of our PNAA leaders all working together to get that done. But wow, what an amazing webinar. I really can't help but say, if you are not part of P3 yet, you should be. We have had many of these webinars presented, a lot of skills that you can learn from our speakers, our experts in the fields that they do, coming here, giving their time, and may I add, for free, or maybe not, to provide all these skills to the P3 members. And we have actually opened it up to PNAA members and non-members as well. As leaders, we know how important communication is. Communication will dictate the connections that we make, the decisions that will be made. It influences and motivates the recipients of those messages. So it's very important for us to do this well. And thank you. I truly appreciate Dr. Dula Pacquaio and Dr. Dan Lovinaria for sharing their experiences and their knowledge with us. One unsolicited advice from me as an educator, as a nursing professional development specialist, we all know about the domains of learning. There's cognitive, affective, and psychomotor, or we know them better as knowledge, skills, and attitude. Public speaking is a skill. So you can attend many more webinars, you can read many more books, but unless you practice it, you're not going to get that skill. So please practice. Both our speakers talked about recording yourselves. That is very intimidating. That was for me when I did that. But do record yourselves and watch yourselves after. I heard that from both of our speakers. Rehearse, record your speeches, ask your friends to listen to you and give you the advice and constructive feedback, and be prepared to get that feedback. It hurts, even hearing it from a friend sometimes. So be prepared to get that feedback. Thank you to the P3 steering committee. Sue, great job hosting. And thank you to the over 100 participants who attended tonight. And thank you to Dr. Gloria Briones for, again, being our leader and making P3 happen. So with that, I'll end, and then I wish everyone a good night and hope to see you on other P3 and PNAA events. Good night.
Good night.
May I call on Dr. Priscilla Sagar to our facilitator for the Pulong.